I think I'm the smartest person in the state.
Where is your child on the developmental curve?
Dylan just ahead of the game, talking at 18 months, reading when he was 4.
But I've got a kid here looking in the camera saying, I'm smart. That can become a negative. Is your child hitting all the important milestones when they should?
Is my child ahead of the curve? Of course he is.
My son is extremely smart.
My kids are brilliant.
Everybody thinks they're raising an Einstein. Are you sure that he's really gifted?
I really think he is.
I'm not saying your child isn't special. I want to start a fight. Coming up, let's do it. I want you to get excited about your life. If you're going to talk to me, you're going to have to be honest. This is going to be a changing day in your life. Nowadays, everybody thinks they're raising an Einstein. Or they're panicked their child just doesn't measure up. Is he tall enough? Does she weigh too much or not enough? When will it start crawling, walking, talking? Well, today we'll deal with where your child is on the curve. Whatever the curve is. That's like one of those they say sort of things. My first guest believe their son is truly gifted. At age 7, he's already read 2 Harry Potter books all by himself. Take a look.
I'm really smart. I think I'm the smartest person in the state.
When he was born, we knew there was something different about him, just the way he looked at us.
He was ahead of the game on a lot of things, talking very clearly at 18 months.
About 2 years old, he would begin sounding out tunes and playing them on the piano.
Dylan started reading when he was 4.
Put your apron away.
At a very young age, he wanted to have control of the environment around him.
Get in there.
Tammy and I are concerned that we're not pushing Dylan enough and that he's getting bored with his schoolwork.
It is a constant struggle for me. It does get frustrating.
It's our job list.
He has his set ways of doing things, and if it's not exactly what he thinks it should be, he starts crying.
We're playing school and I'm gonna be the teacher.
It becomes a tightrope to balance between the 3 kids. We don't want to make our other children feel like they're any less. We do worry that Dylan does think that he's more special than everybody else.
I do think I'm different from other kids because I'm really smart.
Some of his social skills are not as developed.
What I don't like about school is kids picking on me. I just really hate that.
At one point, he came home crying because a kid punched him in the stomach.
I really wish that he would be a boy and play in the dirt. We really struggle with knowing what to do with a child that is ahead of the curve. How far do we push, and when do we stop and just let him be a kid?
Well, push or not push? That's the question, right?
Definitely.
Right, correct.
I think the question should be how much he's going to push you. Okay, this is going to be more of a hang on than push maybe, and that's some of the struggle you're having, right?
Definitely, yeah.
Yes.
Now, but let me ask you guys, some things bothered me about that tape. There were 3 or 4 references in the tape by him about how smart he is. Do you think you guys are focused on that too much? Too much of his intellectual dimension?
I think that we have focused on it recently because he focuses on it quite a bit.
Well, who told him he was so smart?
Well,
how does the kid have the concept that I'm smarter than everybody else unless somebody's told him that?
Well, that started early when he was in pre-K and started reading so advanced for his age, and we started, questioning teachers, is this normal? And his teachers have said, you're reading ahead of the other kids and giving him advanced reading materials. And so we have talked to him about, you need to really try hard because you are smart and you need to make the most of, that you have this intellectual ability.
So you've essentially given him the message that you're different.
We try to tell all of our kids that they're different, that they're special in certain ways. With him, it was that...
That's different than just saying, That's a different question. I mean, just telling them you're really special versus because he said, I'm different than the other kids. And then in the same breath you say, he's not fitting in socially, and kids are picking on him, and he's not relating well. But it sounds like an awful lot of people have been telling him that in some way he's not the same as the other kids. Do you think that's a problem?
I don't think that we focus that he's so much better than anybody else. We feel like we focus on that he is smart and that's what he is good at, and we try to make him feel like he is special because of that. But like I said, we do that with our other kids as well. I don't think we use it as a determining thing to say, oh, you're so much better than all the kids in your class because you're smart.
Are you sure that he's really gifted?
I really think he is, definitely.
Because he was tested and he didn't test gifted. You said they said he didn't want to take the test, so he didn't do particularly well on the test, right? Because he wasn't motivated that day?
Well,
and that's a very legitimate thing,
yeah,
by the way.
The tester
I don't want to take your test today.
Actually came out and said that he had outsmarted part of the test, that he figured out after a certain amount of wrong answers, he would get to go play and have a snack.
I've been a psychometrician for 30 years, and I've never had that happen, by the way.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just saying.
That's what this tester told us that he felt like happened.
And he didn't do particularly well in school last year.
He did well academically. He didn't do well socially. Towards the end of the year, that started to affect his academics.
What do you think about all this there, Dad?
As far as the end of last year in school, the teacher had to give him special reading materials because he was a little more advanced than the rest of the class. And when she stopped doing that, it became more of a behavior issue, and then started affecting his academics.
And let me tell you why I'm asking. I'm not saying that he's not gifted. I don't know the child. I don't know. So I don't have an opinion about that. I know if he's read 2 Harry Potter books cover to cover and he's 7 years old, I couldn't get through one of them. There's too many little twizzles and zizzles and all of that. I mean, I didn't. And he not only has read them, he's kind of memorized all the characters and the relationships and all.
Yeah.
So, he's obviously got some talent in that regard. But the reason I'm asking, psychologically, it just jumped out at me that I've got a kid here looking in the camera saying, I'm smart, and I'm smarter than, and that doesn't seem a good thing to me. So I'm just wondering if you might want to talk to his teachers about not making him feel like he's so set apart, because that can become a negative to him. And there are a lot of really smart kids who just absolutely take a step back and start failing purposely because they don't want to be seen as a brainiac. And so, I mean, that could be part of the social problem. And I'm sensitive to something called iatrogenic labeling. And Dylan probably knows what that means. But y'all ask him when you get home.
Yeah.
But, iatrogenic labeling is when a label causes more problems than the condition it describes. So labels can be very baggage laden. And if he's having social problems, that could be part of it. So I want to talk about what to do about that and what to do to make sure he doesn't get bored because everything is too simple or repetitive. He doesn't like repetitive things either, right?
Not at all.
All right, so while Dylan may be gifted in the classroom, he is behind the curve socially. Would you agree?
I would say so.
All right, and coming up, I'm going to talk about what parents can do to help if you're in that condition. We'll be right back.
The kids tease me at school, and they sometimes throw me into the mud.
Dylan is so far developed academically and intellectually that it sets him apart and makes him a target in their classroom.
Is my child ahead of the curve? Of course he is.
Leave him alone. My son is extremely, extremely smart.
It seems that my son's language skills are above the other kids in his class. Can you wait 1 minute? I can't. He can't wait.
My kids are ahead of the curve because I work very hard with them.
My kids are brilliant, of course. It runs in the family.
My kid crawled at 3 months. Well, mine learned their ABCs at 18 months, and mine solved algebraic equations at age 5. I'm so tired of the comparison amongst parents. We're talking about where children are on the developmental curve. Everybody thinks their kid's a genius. I mean, Keith and Tammy say they don't know the best way to parent their gifted 7-year-old. Now, I think one of the things that I believe people make a mistake about is they'll decide that a child is gifted if they show a strength early in one particular area, like reading comprehension or math or music or something like that. But the truth is, there is no curve. There are kids who don't do what the other kids are doing until a year later, and then there are kids that just rock it, and they wind up at the same place at age 10, 12, 15, 16. And the problem we get into is we look at one area. I mean, there's intellectual IQ, but there's also social IQ, emotional IQ, adaptive IQ. There's all of these things to see how well the child does across the board. And I think what you're seeing is you've got a strength in one area, like maybe reading and reading comprehension, and a weakness in another area in terms of social sensitivity and interaction skills. And that kind of averages out. I mean, I'm not saying that your child isn't special, but
Right.
And your question is, well, what do we do? Do we push him, push him, push him? And your mother says you're not pushing enough. You think they need to push him more?
In the area of music, yes. I think he has a great aptitude for music and an ear for music, and I would just like to see more structure musically, have him in piano lessons, and help develop that talent within him.
Yeah. And grandmothers are for sure that all the kids are gifted and special, right? No doubt there. And the idea that I have is I don't believe in pushing kids. I really don't. There's a difference between paving some paths for them, making opportunities available to them, because if a child is curious, if they're gifted, they're bright, they're inquisitive, and they're curious, and you make opportunities available for them, and they have a particular aptitude in an area, they will gravitate to that. You got to pave the road for them so it's available. I mean, he may not walk 5 miles to the library to read a book, but if you make the books readily available, then you're going to see him stimulate himself. Mm-hmm. If he has a music aptitude and he doesn't like the repetitiveness of practice, the self-teaching programs on the computer are really, really good, and he may be a self-taught. You said he likes rules. You said he likes orders. The relationships within music are something that can give him really expansive opportunities with no limits associated with the academic situation. You're also concerned about spending too much focus on him versus the other kids because he demands more, right?
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Exactly.
How does he get along with his brothers and sisters?
With his 2 brothers, he fights quite a bit with our middle son, Brett, who is 5. Every day it's a battle of, it's mine, no, it's mine, and Dylan always plays the boss, of course, because he's the older one and knows more. Mm-hmm. So, and he knows more. So that makes it difficult.
He told us that.
Yeah.
Yes, he did.
He pointed that out.
Right. And that's what makes it difficult. It's a discipline nightmare sometimes with Dylan and Brett trying to keep peace in the house because they fight all the time.
Well, I think it can be very important when children are different among themselves, whether one is super bright and another one's a super athlete or whatever. Even without those distinguishing features, all children are different, and they're going to require different things and different energies. I think one of the most important things you can do in this situation with Dylan, and that parents can do with multiple kids in the family in general, is to make sure that you have a unique and separate relationship with each one of your kids. You need to find something with each of your children that you do only with them. That's kind of like, that's your secret. Now, you can do things with all of them together, but it's like, this is my special time. Dad only does the computer with me, or Mom only plays this musical instrument with me, or only Mom and I look at this butterfly book, or whatever it is, so they know that there's that special thing that they have just with you. And if Dylan right now is absorbing more of your time and energy to figure things out, to keep him stimulated, all that, you can really ameliorate that problem if you really cultivate that separate and special relationship with each of the other children. But my recommendation to you is that you not push this kid, that you give him lots of opportunities and support what he naturally gravitates towards. You said his number one thing is he loves reading. That's good, because the library's cheap. I mean, you can find all kinds of books. You don't have to spend a lot of money. It's not about booking him for a different activity every hour on the day with tutors and this and that. Give him the opportunity and see if he embraces it. All right. And develop those relationships with the other kids. All right, next, they walk alike, they look alike, they just don't talk alike. One mom struggled not to compare her twin girls. We'll be right back. You sure don't want to put Dylan ahead right now because he's social.
I don't worry about Kate.
This is a donkey.
I do worry about Sarah.
Papa, green, yellow.
I don't want her to be seen as the dumb one or the ugly one.
The tip today has to do with how to raise an emotionally healthy child. There are 5 important things. Number 1, love your child. Build a strong relationship. You have to invest in these children, and that's with one-on-one time. Number 2, appreciate his or her uniqueness. All children are different, and find that thing about them that is special and make sure they feel special at home. Because if they don't feel special there, they will not require people to treat them with dignity and respect when they go out into the world. Number 3, be sure you give your child opportunities. Let your child explore the world and discover everything that it has to offer. Number 4, don't compare. Don't spend time comparing your child to other children. He or she is unique. And try, number 5, to see the world through your child's eyes. Take their point of view. You might learn something. We just saw the challenges parents face with a child who is ahead of the curve. But what if you believe that your child lags behind? Now, Trina is the mother of twin girls, and she just can't help but compare them. It's hard when they're twins. Take a look.
Mark and I have 4 children.
Okay, let's go. There it is.
Not everyone gets to have twins, but I got to.
Kate is the social one.
Hi, I'm Kate.
Sarah is more interested in making sure that everybody feels good.
When they were born, I couldn't tell them apart at all. But when they started to talk, I knew right away that Kate was miles ahead.
Look at, this is a donkey.
I couldn't understand 90% of what Sarah said.
I'm playing on the doggy.
Yeah? I always thought I'm comparing them, but then I got convinced to go have Sarah tested and found out Sarah did have some speech delays. They also told me that she had very low confidence. I was crushed. Of all things in the world that I want my children to have, it's self-esteem and confidence. Sarah is a very bright child. She just isn't able to articulate herself. I worry about when she goes to kindergarten and if she's going to be labeled as slow.
You guys ready for school? Is the bus here?
I worry that her classmates are going to think because they can't understand her, she's dumb.
The fact that she is a twin makes the potential outcomes worse. Through her whole life, she's going to have someone who looks just like her, and I don't want her to be seen as the dumb one or the one that's shy or to be second fiddle to Kate.
They're very close. They don't like to be separated. They often climb into the same bed and sleep together. Genetics didn't play a role in this case because they have the same genetics.
Ready? You all done?
I wonder all the time if I'm paranoid. Is there something that I need to do that I'm not doing, or do I just need to relax?
Well, let's talk about this. First off, do you think that there is a developmental lag here, or do you think Kate's just more precocious than Sarah?
Both. I absolutely believe there's a delay because they were both tested and Sarah came out as developmentally delayed in speech and articulation. But
Okay.
Kate is more precocious.
All right, so that makes the gap look
bigger.
Even bigger, right? All right, now, one of the things that I really, really worry about is, first off, you absolutely have to abandon this concept of comparison. And that's so hard, I know, because it's like you got a little marker here that you can measure, like, well, this one's doing this and that one should be. But the fact that they're twins doesn't mean that they're going to develop at the same rate. She may be going through what we call a non-fluency phase, and it is temporary, and it doesn't mean that at 10 years old or 12 years old they will be at different places. In fact, I put together a graphic to kind of describe what I'm talking about here, okay? If you'll look right here, or you can see it over your shoulder, if you look at development going up the y-axis and you look at time as you move to the right, across time there is this norm that people have come up with. But that's a statistical norm. That just means you took all the kids and averaged them together and got a number of where they should be speech-wise, language-wise, mental functioning, or whatever. But that's a mythical line. There is no normal child. It's just not there. And what you see sometimes, secondly, is a child that's an early bloomer. And that may be Kate, where she just takes off and gets a lot of her development really early, but then plateaus out and comes to the same place. Yes. Or you might have a situation where, thirdly, Sarah starts off and she goes along more slowly, and then she's a late bloomer. So, but you notice they all wind up in the same place. And for that reason, you can't really make a decision at any one time. You have to take multiple measures of where they are. You just can't go in and test a child at one time and say, well, against some statistical norm, there's a developmental lag there. That may be true against this mythical line, but that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with her.
Right.
Now, there might be, and that's okay. It's not, most of the things that any responsible therapist or speech therapist is going to tell you is give you a lot of things to do at home with them. And so there's no harm, it's just giving one-on-one attention to the child. But you can't necessarily assume that because she's not doing what Kate is or what some statistical line is, that there's a problem. Now, but you think there is a problem?
I do. I still do, even though I'm believing what you say, and I know that the norm is a range, that the norm isn't a straight line. I still do, I know for a fact that she's delayed. She was tested and admitted into special needs classes at 3 years old because her speech is delayed.
Well, that may be, but it may not be. Don't take those tests as gospel.
And I have.
Because I'm telling you, they're absolutely not. You said, I know she is because she was tested.
No.
But you know what those tests are? Those tests are statistical models. There's a difference between speech lags and language problems. You know, speech is the ability to make certain sounds. Language is the ability to tie it together and both express and receive things. Does she follow directions?
Yes. Yes.
She follows directions very well.
Yes.
Does she follow directions that have 2 or 3 steps in them?
Yes.
Okay, so
she only was tested delayed in speech and articulation.
Okay, so you can give her a 3-step process. Take this brush, go put it in that drawer and turn off the light. Bang, bang, bang. She can do that.
Right.
Then there's no lag there.
No, there's not.
So,
but my big thing is, okay, as her mother, I have 3-year-olds. There's something that if I need to do it now, now's the time to help them. I mean, if this does turn out to be a delay that is short-term, great. If it does turn out to be a delay that turns out to be longer, what can I do to help her so that when she realizes she has the delay, she can handle herself better?
All right, we're going to talk about that as soon as we come back, and I'm going to figure out if a speech delay is maybe caused by something else environmentally that you can work on at home, because I don't like the labeling that comes with going to therapy. I bet she didn't even like being tested, did she?
No.
We'll be right back.
We always gave our babies pacifiers. Kate latched onto hers right away, and Sarah didn't. She would just spit it out and stick in her thumb. After about 1.5 years, we took the pacifier away from Kate, and we couldn't take the thumb away from Sarah. I have noticed Sarah sucking her thumb at least 10 times a day. My husband has brothers and sisters that suck their thumbs for a long time and had horrible teeth.
She knows that we want her to stop. When we tell her, okay, don't suck your thumb tonight, she says, no, I suck my thumb. I'll wait till you leave.
Yeah, she ain't dumb, we know that. We're talking about where your child falls on the developmental curve. Trina is the mother of 3-year-old twins and wonders if Sarah's thumb sucking may be the cause of her speech delay.
I have wondered that.
Highly unlikely, but possible. I mean, that could be contributing to it. Yeah, I've said I think we overtreat kids and we need to be patient. Now, that doesn't mean that if there's a fever or a physical condition that you shouldn't recognize that and react to it in an affirmative way. But when we're talking about their mental, emotional, social development, I think we have to be good observers across time instead of racing into treatment, because the treatment itself and the labeling that comes from that can create problems. It's often good to go ask those questions and get the information without the child first to see if there are some things you can learn. But let's talk about what could contribute to a speech delay besides thumb sucking.
Okay.
Which could be, you know, if it changes the dentistry and the palate, I mean, that can have an effect. But my experience with children is that they tend to do what they need to. It's kind of like the kid that didn't say anything until he was like 5 and they thought he was like just really behind, and one morning he just said, "This oatmeal's cold." His mother said, "What? You've never said anything in all these years. What's the deal?" He said, "Well, up till now everything was going pretty well." You know, so children do what they need to do. And sometimes, particularly when you have twins, one will take a subservient role. And it's kind of like, sis gets everything lined up. I don't need to go to the trouble. I mean, really, they can take a role where they defer to the more dominant personality, and so they don't develop the language skills. So one of the things you can do is spend some real separate time with Sarah. You can model by reading to her a lot. Be careful that you don't complete her sentences ever, or learn her nonverbal language and know what she wants, and so you just react to that instead of requiring her to produce the speech. You can make it too easy where, you know, necessity is the mother of invention, where she won't do it if she doesn't need to do it.
Yes.
And I think it's very important that parents understand not to repeat baby talk back to the child.
I probably have done that.
Because it's real cute when they come in and say, "I want some Wawa." But it's a little embarrassing in the 6th grade when they say, "Can I get some Wawa?" Because that's the symbol system they've learned, and it confuses them. They have to learn one whole set of symbols and then learn a whole nother set of symbols. So I think it's really important that you spend some time with her, you model through reading, you make certain that you create the need for her to talk by not anticipating, and be sure that you don't reinforce bad speech behavior. Right. And if she responds to that, that's fine. And if you're going to see, then you're okay. If you're going to see a speech therapist, you really want to encourage them to instruct you on how to do as much as you can outside the treatment environment. Because the child sometimes will label themselves as, "I have to go because I don't talk very well."
Yes.
And most speech therapists are wonderful, and they have these play situations, and they have them name toys and common objects and ask for things, and they're really great about it. But the most that you can do at home, the better off you are. But don't get caught up in this curve, and don't get caught up in the comparison between the two. Kate may be the fast bloomer, and Sarah may be the low bloomer. Now, your concern is, well, what is there? If there is a problem, I don't want to ignore it.
Exactly.
And therefore, the gap just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. I'm not asking you to ignore it. If she needs treatment, get it. But I'm saying do everything you can to stimulate her environmentally at home. All right, up next, those often dreaded percentiles and what they mean to your child, and more importantly, what they mean to parents. We'll be right back.
She only is 8.5 months old, and for her weight, she's between 25th and 50th percentile, closer to the 25th. When she was born, she was 8 pounds, 5 ounces. As a general guideline, a baby doubles their birth weight by 6 months old, so she's not quite there yet. She's not doing the things that she should be doing for her age. Her cousin Riley is born a month before her, and he's a lot more advanced. All the percentiles you hear about, should be doing by when, it really made me question my ability to be a mom.
Many parents stress over where their child fits on the percentile chart. That's what pediatricians use to measure development. Now, you just saw Shanley, whose mom fears she's too small. Brian, on the other hand, worries that her toddler is too big. Take a look.
My daughter Kelby was born well above the 95th percentile. She was 9.5 pounds and 23 inches long. Now at 3.5, she's wearing size 6 to 8 clothes. She's over 50 pounds and she's 42 inches tall. The doctors are estimating Kelby will be 6'2 to 6'4. It's always hard to be different in any way, but something that's as noticeably as being a head taller than her classmates may cause her some trouble.
Can I have some cold water?
Verbally, Kelby seems to be at least 2 years ahead of some of her peers. I worry that people think she's so much older because she looks it and she acts it intellectually, but she doesn't have the social skills to follow with that. Dr. Phil, please help me develop a strategy to support and protect my Kelby.
All right, we're going to do just that, but I brought in some reinforcements. I want to introduce Dr. Harvey Karp. He's an MD, renowned expert on children's health and the author of 3 child development books. Now, Dr. Karp is an assistant professor of pediatrics at the UCLA School of Medicine and has a private practice in Santa Monica. Probably couldn't get in, but he's got a practice out there. We'll ask about that. Dr. Karp, welcome.
Thanks very much.
So Bryn and Annette are kind of on different ends of the continuum in terms of this percentile stuff. What's up with all of this?
Well, you know, a doctor tries to do the best job possible when a parent comes in and says, is my child okay? And we have different ways of figuring that out. So we'll check blood pressure, for example, and see is the blood pressure too high or too low. And weighing and measuring a child's height is the same thing. If the child fits in these curves that you're talking about, in general, that's a sign that they're growing in a good way, that they're healthy. And if they're outside the curves, it doesn't mean that they're not healthy at all, like you were pointing out. But it is a red flag to follow up and to maybe ask some extra questions to make sure the growth is normal.
Now Bryn, you're at the 95th percentile, right?
Yes.
All right, and tell me your concerns about that. Because she's good size, right? 42 inches tall and 50 pounds, and she's 3.5.
She acts like a 3-year-old. Everywhere we go, people expect her to be 4 or 5. When she answers, they say, how old is she? She says 3. And even adults, immediate response is, no, you're not, honey. And they look to me for confirmation on their own statement when she's telling them like it is.
So that you're saying there's just a reaction because she looks more developed than her age.
Right.
And you fear when she starts school soon that she's going to feel out of place.
She's bigger than her classmates. She's not going to fit in with everybody else. She can't share clothes with her friends. She outgrew her car seat early. She outgrew the backpack we had early.
What do you say about that, Doc?
Well, I mean, we all like to fit in, and Kelby will want to fit in as well. I would say one thing, though. You did make a comment about what she'll end up being when she's an adult. And as you saw on the graph before, she may be tall now and big now. It doesn't mean she's going to end up quite that big. So I don't think that you should hang your hat on that 6'2", you know, prediction. Well, she'll be big, I guarantee you that. But you can't just extrapolate or predict from where she is now and where she's going to be later on. It's a lot of time in between now and then.
And I think we also need to think about the fact that when we talk about starting school, children aren't near as aware of some of these differences as you might think or predict. For example, it's usually at least age 5 before they really master the concept of same and different, and before they really master the concept of like self versus other. Now, that doesn't mean they don't, this is my toy, leave it alone. But I'm not sure that there will be as much awareness about that as you might fear from those children. And you're on the other end of the continuum, right?
Yes.
Because you're at the 25th percentile.
Yes.
With your child, and so you're concerned that the child may be sickly or underdeveloped in some way that way.
Yes, she's a little girl with a big appetite. She's almost on a newborn schedule. She eats so much, yet it's just hard for her to even get the weight on. She's just struggled just to keep at the 25th percentile. And people look at her, oh, how old is she? And when I say 8 months old, they look at me like, are you not feeding this child? She only looks 5 or 6 months old. So it worries me that am I not doing something to help her along?
Okay, and so you're wondering, have you made a mistake? Have you messed up in some way?
Exactly.
But are you, I mean, you're feeding the child well.
All the time.
And you're loving the child and
Absolutely.
being nurturing in that way, and you're providing safety for the child.
Yes.
At that point, it comes down to just some physical metabolic things that are going to happen or not. True?
As a doctor, there's a pediatrician. You don't just look at where a child is at any one point on the curve. You look at how they're growing over time. So for example, if your child's at the 25th percentile and last visit they were at the 50th percentile and last visit they were at the 90th percentile, they're cutting across the curve, and that would be a red flag for me. On the other hand, if they're at the 25th each time, that's probably the growth pattern that she's going to establish. She's just going to be a little bit more petite.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean that there's bad things in the future necessarily. It's just where you are. Somebody has to be at the 25th or there wouldn't be one.
Yeah, that's
right?
true.
True?
You got it.
All right, up next, answers to some very basic yet anxiety-provoking child development questions.
Tomorrow on an all-new Dr. Phil.
Melissa is so fed up with her husband's fault-finding ways, she's ready to pack up the kids and hit the road.
My husband is negative beyond belief.
Move, I'll do the dishes, Melissa. I'm always looking at what's not being done the way I think it should be done. No, that's not how you do it. Do it like that.
I think it's fear. You're holding on really tight. All new Dr. Phil. 3 previous marriages that have ended in divorce. Your 4th is in trouble, and the common denominator is you.
All new Dr. Phil, tomorrow.
Today we're talking about where your child is on the curve and when to worry of your own way. Now, when we were just talking, we're talking with Dr. Harvey Karp. Now, if a child is at the 25th percentile, is that a red flag to you?
Yeah, 25% of kids are going to be at the 25th percentile or lower, and those are normal kids. So the 25th percentile is not at all a red flag to me. What's more a red flag is how is the child growing over time? And if she is not thriving, or if she's growing, she used to be at the 5th percentile, now she's 25th and she's on her way to the 50th, that may be a problem. So it's not only a snapshot in time.
All right, Kathleen, you had a question, right?
Yes, I do. I have a 15-month-old son at home who is full of a lot of energy. And ever since he was about 2 months old, he has always been into bouncing, and he's always wanted to bounce on my lap. And if you would stop, he would get very angry. Well, now that he's been started walking and running, I noticed that he has a lot more energy than children his own age. And just about a week and a half ago, I found him on my dining room table hanging from my chandelier. So my question is there such thing as hyperactivity in children his age?
Based on results, he was hanging from the chandelier.
Oh, yes.
So how did he get up there?
He had gotten on a chair to the table and was swinging. And I had just walked out of the room for maybe 30 seconds, and he had done that so quickly.
Yeah. Now, he also bites a lot when he's frustrated, right?
Yes. Well, not when he's frustrated. He just likes to bite. He's a biter. He's not out of anger. And I'll be laying on the floor with him, and he'll come up and bite me on the back and then get in my face and look at my reaction.
Okay. Dr. Karp, I'll let you answer that. I'll let you answer that medically, and then I'll tell you what you need to do. Go ahead.
I mean, as a pediatrician, the red flag for me is, okay, this happens, but now let's keep him from really hurting himself. And you have to take very seriously childproofing the house, which means the electric outlets and falling down the stairs and window panes that he could fall through, that kind of thing. Yeah. And then the biting is normal, you know, kind of caveman behavior for a 15-month-old, and And you just keep stopping him every time he does it because you don't want him to, what you don't want to do is kind of laugh, isn't that cute? Because
Right.
that's accidentally going to tell him that this is a good thing to do. And then maybe he'll chomp into the neighbor's child
Right.
and you really have
Well,
trouble.
yeah, he has tried to bite several other children.
Now, you heard the civilized response from the physician. And let's really hit one of the points he said at the end, and that is you need to let him know that's not okay. 15 months old is not too early to set boundaries.
Right.
And they have to be very basic, they have to be very concrete, but not swinging from the chandeliers is kind of is on the list. And biting is absolutely unsocialized behavior. And at 15 months, you can't sit down and say, okay, let's talk about this biting, young man.
All right.
You can't do it. There's got to be an immediate consequence for that. I mean, you've got to let him know this is not okay, this hurts, don't do that. And don't bite him back or anything like that, but you need to communicate swiftly and with absolute consistency. If you're on the phone and he bites you, and you think, well, I couldn't say anything because I was on the phone, that's not true. You need to say, you need to excuse me. I'll call you back and hang up and deal with it so he can predict from a very early age with great consistency that that's not going to foretell good things to come.
Well, how do you tell a 15-month-old no?
That's
when
good.
He acts like.
That's good. Yeah. Hold that thought right there. I mean, really, no, stop, bad, don't, quit, hurts. I mean, any kind of inflective word that is unpleasant to him will come to be associated with him doing that.
Right.
We'll be right back.
Starting Monday, a brand new season of Dr. Phil, Families in Chaos.
That was you that said, come up with another threesome, another woman in your bed, or I'm out of here.
Teens in trouble.
To cope with my anger, I've cut myself 200 times.
We're going to get you help, but you cannot run, you cannot lie.
Exclusive interviews.
There was recently a picture in the media of Jenna sticking her tongue out. Did you talk to her about it?
And get the truth about those famous TV makeovers.
I thought people are going to like me because I'm pretty, which was very wrong to think.
They wanted to look like Brad Pitt. If you were my kids, I would have said, you cannot do that.
Why's that?
I'm glad you asked.
Plus, Dr. Phil does the impossible. He's taking on an entire town, one family at a time.
If you ever lay another hand on her, I will force you to file charges and put him in jail.
Starting Monday, the new season of Dr. Phil.
We've been talking about children today and this curve. The message I've given you is the curve is a statistical curve. Don't panic if your child is off of that statistical mark somewhere. Watch it across time. Take multiple measurements and see if there's change. That should be your alarm. For more information on this and other parenting issues, go to drphil.com, and we will have Dr. Karp's books listed there as well, because there's some good ones, particularly if you got a crying baby. See you next time. Thanks, guys. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Harvey, thanks so much.